This is the DG&S campaign recap series. Adventures in Darkadia Chapter 1, Shackles and Saltwater. The first thing they felt was the cold, damp, heavy air clinging to their skin like a wet shroud. One by one, the survivors stirred, groaning against the pain and the weight of iron manacles. Chains clinked faintly in the darkness of the cavern, and the muffled moans of others echoed off the stone walls. What dim light existed revealed only fellow prisoners, each shackled, bruised and confused. They had seen each other before, on the ship to Avonport. Livia was among them, her tall wood elf frame slumped still unconscious against the wall, a bleeding gash dried across her forehead, just contrasting her fiery red hair. On the ship she was an intimidating presence, as she had a sharp demeanor and an even sharper spear. Beside her, Onali, another Elvari of leaner build and sharp violet eyes, stirred. She was the first on the ship to notice something was wrong. Both women wore only the thinnest layers of linen and leather, their feet bare even when they got on the ship from a small high elven port off the coast of Shilan Aethel. Across from them, Gadwin, a human in a torn shirt, blinked through strands of white hair with black tips. His eyes shimmered faintly in the gloom. On this ship he was wrapped in strange black robes trimmed with purple, his voice with a heavy eastern accent. Nearby, Kerrick sat motionless, pale as moonlight. His white hair framed eerily glowing eyes, and a strange bracelet of metal had fused with the flesh of his arm. Before, he seemed to know his way around the ship and had been helping the crew. The last among them, an unconscious dark-haired deckhand, lay still and unmoving. Then came the sound, wet, deliberate steps slapping against stone. A figure emerged from the dark tunnel, scaled, reptilian and glistening with sea-slick skin. A Sawagin, known across Darkadia as a sea devil, entered the chamber. Its trident gleamed in the dimness, and its slitted eyes locked onto the prisoners. Without a word, it strode toward the unconscious deckhand, ran him through with its weapon, and dragged the lifeless body away into the deeper dark. Memories flickered in the minds of the captives, memories of a storm off the coast of Camlor, 2 ships, screaming winds, blinding lightning, and shadowy figures crawling aboard. Sahwagin. Among the chaos, they recalled a cloaked figure standing atop the rocks, raising their arms to call down lightning like a god of the storm. The flash of the strike was the last thing they saw before sinking into darkness. Now they were here. With grim determination, the captives broke their chains one by one, working through pain and blood to free themselves. Beyond the chamber stretched a vast network of coastal caves, lit faintly by glowing fungi and echoing with the distant crash of waves. The group retrieved their soaked weapons and gear from a pile of looted items, then pressed onward, deeper into the caves in search of escape. They fought through multiple ambushes, clashing with Sahwagin in brutal close quarters. In one skirmish, Livia was badly wounded, her shoulder pierced through by a jagged spear. Bloodied but not broken, they reached the exit. A flat shelf of rock beside the ocean, the sky above still shrouded in the grey pallor of pre-dawn. Behind them, more Sawagin closed in. Cliffs loomed above, blocking their return inland. The sea churned at their backs. With no other option, Gadwin sent his golden dragonling homunculus aloft, securing a rope at the cliff's summit. The others climbed desperately, the Sawagin hot on their heels. Just as they reached the top, Onali, still on the shoreline, transformed in a swirl of feathers into an owl and soared to safety. They ran, vanishing into the shadowed trees of the Durandal forest, not realizing they had entered one of the vastest, most ancient wilds in Camlor. By midday, fog clung to the underbrush as they stumbled across the ruins of a long-abandoned watchtower. Within the crumbling stone, they tended wounds, especially Livia's shoulder and head, as rain began to come down. There, introductions were made. Livia and Onali revealed they were Elvari from the Othani clan, wood elves rarely seen outside their mystical homeland of Shilan Aethel. Livia, a warrior. Onali, a druid, able to take on the form of beasts. Gadwin spoke of his far-off homeland in the eastern lands of Darkadia and his destination, Kingsdawn, capital of Camlor. Kerrick, distant and cryptic, admitted he too was bound for Kingsdawn. Though on separate ships, all had planned to land in Avonport and travel inland. Kerrick believed they had crashed just west of their goal, and insisted they head east. That evening, a Sahwagin passed near the ruins, but failed to discover them. Once the coast was clear, they pressed on eastward beneath the veil of night. By moonrise, they stumbled onto a small forest road. Cart tracks in the mud showed signs of life, and the road led southeast. After hours of travel, they found solace in a lonely inn nestled among the trees, its wooden sign reading The Whispering Pines. Inside, they met Nob, the innkeeper, a rotund, cheerful man who offered them rooms at a generous price. The inn was sparsely occupied, with only a few locals drinking near the hearth. A hooded figure by the fire watched them silently before vanishing into the night. Livia and Onali, covered in blood, salt and battle grime, paid Nob to draw a hot bath in the barn. It was the first comfort they had known since waking in chains. Finally, the group retired to their rooms, the door shut, the fire warm, and, for the first time in what felt like days, sleep came without fear. They had survived. Morning came gently to the Whispering Pines Inn. Soft sunlight filtered through threadbare curtains, casting pale beams across worn floorboards and modest beds. The scent of dew-kissed earth mingled with old wood and the faint aroma of frying eggs wafting up from the kitchen below. Outside, birds sang amid the pine branches, and somewhere in the distance, the babble of a stream sang its own melody of spring. One by one, the group awoke, aching but alive. Livia, Onali, Gadwin, and Kerrick gathered their thoughts in silence. Beyond their window, the forest stood tall and green, swaying softly, unaware of the horrors they'd escaped just days ago. The clatter of hooves and the jangle of armor disrupted the morning calm. Looking out the window, they spotted 3 riders approaching the inn. At their head rode a lean, dark-haired man clad in deep green bearing the crest of the Camlaw tax office, Aldrich Stone. Flanking him were 2 guards. Roderick, a bearded brute with a heavy stare, and Bran, wiry and sharp-eyed, younger but no less vigilant. They dismounted with practiced ease. Aldrich's tone was clipped and superior as he confronted Nob outside the inn. "Nob," he declared, "you were given reprieve before winter. That reprieve is over. I expect payment in full." The innkeeper stammered apologies, citing a slow season and thin coin purses, but Aldrich remained unmoved. With the promise of a future reckoning, he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving behind a silence heavier than before. Inside, Livia and Onali exchanged confused glances. "What are taxes?" Onali asked with furrowed brows. Kerrick smirked, amused, and offered a brief explanation about kings, coin, and why humans love to take from each other. Over a modest breakfast, the group learned from Nob that the road running east from the inn was the old forest route to Kingsdawn, the capital of Camlaw. Without fanfare, they shouldered their packs, gave Nob a final nod, and set off down the winding trail. The Durandal forest was beautiful this time of year, cool spring air, scattered bird song, and golden sunlight cutting through dripping canopies. The road was muddy from the rain, and their boots squelched with each step. Though peaceful, the forest had its watchers. Midday they caught sight of the hooded man from the inn the night before, perched in a tree. Before anyone could react, he vanished into the brush like a shadow. Several hours later, the sharp rhythm of axes rang out through the trees. Rounding a bend, the travellers came upon 5 dwarves hard at work, chopping through a massive pine that blocked the road. Nearby stood a beautiful ox-drawn wagon etched with dwarven runes and adorned with carved ram heads, its contents neatly arranged in crates and barrels. From atop the wagon sat Bron Beddick, the eldest and leader of the troop. Gruff, grey-bearded and direct, he offered a warm welcome. He introduced his brothers, Brolin, the quick-witted middle sibling, Barrick, the youngest, fiercely competitive and eager with the axe, Oric, the stoic warrior of the Thadrek clan, and Gildan, their rotund cook and healer with a gentle spirit and a talent for herbs. The dwarves were clearing the old road as they did every spring, choosing this toll-free path over the expensive King's High Road. Friendly banter soon turned to friendly contests. Livia asked to join the chopping and, to everyone's amazement, won handily. Even Oric raised a brow in surprise. Talk turned to their journey. Upon hearing of the group's escape from sea devils, the dwarves looked both impressed and alarmed. They offered to travel together, safety in numbers after all, and the group agreed. As they walked, Kerrick inquired subtly about an old dwarven legend. Redbeard the Fierce, a pirate he once sailed with a century ago, though he wisely kept that detail to himself. The dwarves chuckled knowingly and recounted tales of her fire-haired wrath and daring raids, uncertain if she had truly lived or simply became legend. At camp that night, Kerrick regaled the dwarves with more wonderful tales while Gadwin and Gildan bonded over potions and alchemy. The dwarf shared a recipe for a sage heart tonic, a calming blend made from sage root. The journey continued over 2 more days, filled with muddy roads, chopped trees, and even some dwarven pissing competitions. Eventually, the forest parted. The group stepped into a sea of rolling green hills, vibrant with wildflowers and birdsong. Villages dotted the horizon, smoke trailing from chimneys, and the air smelled of blooming violets and fresh earth. After a couple of hours more of travel, in the far distance, bathed in the orange glow of an approaching storm, Kingsdawn rose. White walls gleamed in the fading light, towers and domes catching the last sun before dark clouds rolled in. The royal palace loomed like a beacon at the heart of the city, regal and radiant. The city buzzed even from afar, a vision of civilization, splendor and secrets waiting to be uncovered. At the city gates, they joined a long queue of travelers and merchants. The dwarves gave their farewells, recommending an inn in the South Wall slums called the Silent Halls Tavern, cheap and rough, but discreet. Rain began to fall as they entered the city, thunder rolling above. The Silent Halls was just as the dwarves described, worn, shadowed, and carved with thieves' cant near the door. Kerrick read the markings without blinking, then spoke to the ball's barkeep in the same coded language. Rooms were arranged, questions were exchanged. They had arrived. They were wet, tired, and sore but alive. And Kingsdawn, gleaming and grimy in equal measure, was theirs to explore.